Welcome to the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, Ed, aka SavageTechman. We talk sci-fi, TV, movies, superheroes, and all from a geek perspective. You can find us on Blogger, Google+, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're everywhere. Join the Geek Homeworld. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Geek Homeworld. I am your host, Ed Ciucevich, aka SavageTechman, and thank you for checking out the podcast here and everything. Today, I'm recording this. It's actually the early morning of Wednesday, August 21st. Very early in the morning, and I should be asleep, but I'm not. So anyway, I'm coming at you with this new episode, and it's going to be a quick one. I know I said that about the last one and it was kind of long, but anyway, some big news broke today, and I'm making my notes as I'm going here, so just looking at some of them here. Well, the big news today was you can hear me writing there. Okay. Something else I wanted to talk about. 3 things. So let's just get the big one out the way. Sony and Marvel, their talks broke down. The latest update is that they're, according to Collider.com, they're talking about, they say, quote, a studio insider told Collider, "This comes down to a producer credit only, and our understanding and negotiations are ongoing." But that's a good development. But what's going on? Well, if you were anywhere today, the world exploded, basically. Sony has had this really strange agreement with Marvel in the MCU to have Spider-Man in the MCU, and brilliantly played. A lot of people are saying one of the best, if not the best, Spider-Man, all around Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Tom Holland has done an exceptional job, and we first saw him in Captain America Civil War, then in Avengers Infinity War, Endgame, and of course Spider-Man Homecoming, and then just recently in Spider-Man Far From Home. Now, if you know, Bob Iger is the president and CEO of Disney that owns Marvel, and Kevin Feige, a lot of people say his name wrong, he is in charge of Marvel. He's the mastermind behind the 11 years 22, 23, whatever movies of Marvel, and shaping everything. Now, let's go back a second. And when we had the Phase 4 announcements, nobody was surprised that Spider-Man wasn't in there, or, you know, X-Men or whatever, Fantastic Four. We knew they'd be coming, and they teased it a little bit, but that's more Phase 5. Which is understandable, okay? But we just assumed that Spider-Man 4 and then eventually Spider-Man 5 would show up in Phase 5, along with like Black Panther 2 and other tentpole movies. And, you know, other than the series that we're getting, like WandaVision, Winter Soldier, and the new Captain America. I can't think of his name. I almost said Nightwing. Falcon. Thank you. And we're getting all those in Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. We're having WandaVision that's going to lead into that. We have the Loki series coming for Disney Plus. So all that's going great. We had the big debacle with Fox and Disney losing some money in their third quarter and freaking out, basically, and turned tail on Fox and was throwing some shade that way. And because when they bought it, there were higher prospects, and then when they got it, especially Dark Phoenix, just really, really bombed for, it was the worst X-Men movie across the board, and financially and otherwise. So there's a lot riding on all that. So that news coming. On the Disney side, Galaxy Quest is not doing well in California. From initial reports, it ends up that the attendance is way down. Some sources are saying that the people are being laid off or they're getting reduced hours. So, there's a bit of a Star Wars, not oversaturation, but after The Last Jedi, there's all of that going on. So there's a lot happening at Disney, a lot happening in Marvel, which is owned by Disney, obviously. But the big news today was that Sony, basically, Marvel came to Sony and said, okay, because this is what happened way back in the 90s, before when Marvel was going through just about bankruptcy and everything else. They gave some of their characters away or sold them off, and Sony and Fox picked up X-Men, and then Sony got Spider-Man and all that, and they were trying to do movies to fund the comics, and it's kind of gone the other way. And the rest is history with the MCU. How spectacular a model that the DCEU tried to follow, the extended universe there at DC, and failed pretty miserably, and even though I think Disney on someone like Shazam and a few others like Aquaman, I think they're on the uptick, and so I think DC's learning to play to their strengths and not try to Justice League things, just do what Marvel did in 20-something movies. They tried to do it with Justice League and then course corrected during production, and the whole Snyder cut that we'll never see. And there's a lot going on. There's a lot wrapped up in all that. So anyway, Spider-Man, what's going to possibly happen, and I believe that they're not going to let it go down this way, but what it comes down to, the understanding was that basically Fox said, okay, you can use Spider-Man in the MCU, and they're getting, I'm hearing 95% of the profits off of Spider-Man and him being in the MCU versus Disney getting 5%. So Disney proposed in their recent talks that it'd be a 50-50 split. Now, in between all this, Venom was a runaway success. And Venom is one of Spider-Man's biggest characters. And we've seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is possibly, arguably, one of the best Spider-Man films. And it opens up so many possibilities of a multiverse. And so Spider-Man's feeling pretty good. With talks breaking down the video game that's exclusively on PlayStation 4, on the PlayStation 5, I believe it's Insomniac Games. Sony has purchased them. So for people that love that Spider-Man game on PS4, exclusively on PS4, they are going to love the fact that Sony's going to make more video games. So if you like Spider-Man video games, you're going to love Sony hanging on to that. And that's fine. But with the rise of Venom basically being a big success for Sony, and they're feeling a little bit cocky, I think, and so they didn't want to agree to this Marvel. So far they haven't, as of the recording of this. And it looks like Spider-Man is out of the MCU. And that could mean a lot of things. It could mean, one, that Tom Holland will no longer be Spider-Man, and nobody's happy about that. And because he was signed along with, and I can't think of the director, but they were signed on for 4 and 5. So we're supposed to get 2 more Spider-Man films, and bringing J. Jonah Jameson back, the original J. Jonah Jameson from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, that trilogy there, was a brilliant move. And in fact, Sony's going to take a page out of Marvel's book at the, I think, Labor Day. They're going to re-release Spider-Man Far From Home into theaters. It's already crossed $1 billion, but they're going to re-release it into theaters. And this time it actually is going to be a re-release. I think it still may be in theaters, but if not, it's going to be a re-release. But it will have at least, I think, 4 more minutes, maybe a little bit longer than that. But it's going to have some actual scenes in there, some scenes that were cut, like where Spider-Man's in the Iron Spider suit and he's fighting a gang, which I think leads to Silvermane later on, possibly in the comics. And so anyway, we've got that and some other scenes in there, so it's going to be a little bit more legitimate of a re-release itself and maybe some of the content. But then the bomb dropped today about everything, so Sony's really trying to capitalize on it, and there's nothing wrong with Sony trying to capitalize on Spider-Man Far From Home, but every fan loves what they did with Spider-Man. I'm not a major fan of Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield and Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think Jamie Foxx, his character of Electro was more interesting than Spider-Man, but, some people do like those films, but it's almost the level of what we got with Fox, and that's the kind of thing we might be heading back to. I personally, my favorite of all time is, like a lot of my friends and a lot of people I know, is Spider-Man 2, the Sam Raimi one with Tobey Maguire and Alfred Molina as Doc Ock. I just think that's the perfect Spider-Man film. Now, I like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It was very good. It's different, but it was very good. Very, very good. And I've enjoyed Tom Holland's portrayal of Spider-Man. He feels like the right age. He almost feels like Peter Parker. Like he really is Peter Parker. Tobey Maguire is a little bit too old for the role when he did it, but I did like what he did. The Sam Raimi films always have a special place. Those Spider-Man films were good. They're much better than the Amazing Spider-Man films that we got. And then I can't find anybody that thinks Tom Holland's doing a bad job. He's probably the perfect epitome, or the closest we have of Spider-Man, of Peter Parker. Now we'll get, and we saw Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen and all that into the Spider-Verse, and it was brilliant in the animation, and it worked. A very good job there all around. So, but where do we go from here? Well, it seems weird that, Sony's playing a big game. They've basically, my understanding of it is, they're basically have the rights to Spider-Man. They loaned out Spider-Man, the character, and MCU quickly made sure that not Andrew Garfield, that Tom Holland, got cast, and they started putting him in films. And part of the Sony leak that happened years ago kind of led to that. It kind of shedded a light on it, and the fans were like, yeah, this would be great. We want Spider-Man in the MCU. We want him in the Avengers. And I know Kevin Feige has a brilliant plan for Spider-Man to basically become like the next Iron Man. He's going to be the leader. And Spider-Man is a top tier character. He's not, just your average character. I think of the X-Men films and I think of the level of what they were done and what Fox did with them. And Disney just does things better when it comes to superhero films. They know how to world build. They know how to do crossovers. They have that whole element down right. And so it's it's a big shame if this falls through. And so far it's looking that way. But money talks, and I'm sure negotiations will pick up, and we all hopefully just exaggerated and just, freaked out for no reason. That would be our best case scenario, but just the thought of Spider-Man not being in the MCU is not good. And I do not want to see another Spider-Man right now. I don't want another reboot. This is not Amazing Spider-Man 1, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and boom, it's time for a reboot. It's not, I would not mind 4 or 5 films. I want Tom Holland to be around. I would like to see him grow into that role, and we saw more of him growing into the role of a leader who could possibly lead the Avengers. And I hate to see all that just erased. And the fact that Kevin Feige won't be able to have a say in that is wrong. It's wrong on so many points. It's like, I have this feeling now that we've gotten through the Infinity Saga, which is 22 films or so. And now we get to basically phase 4, which is more Disney Plus, and then crossing over and building those shows that are going to build into the films, the externals. Hopefully that will do really well. I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the lineup that they have. I'm excited for another Doctor Strange, and with Wanda and Vision coming back, and Wanda Scarlet Witch what happens there will directly lead into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and where Madness is like a character in that. So it's going to be fantastic. And, Blade is now coming in with Mahershala Ali coming into the MCU. And I'm still hoping against all hope that Wesley Snipes comes back as like his mentor, basically like that part that Chris Christopherson, none of you probably know who that is, but Chris Christopherson played. He was the white guy with the beard and all that, kind of grungy looking, but he was kind of the mentor and friend of Blade, of Wesley Snipes' character. I wouldn't mind seeing Wesley Snipes taking on a role like that to Mahershala Ali as the new Blade, and I'm excited for it. The first horror movie, of course, we know is going to come in phase 4, and that's going to be Doctor Strange. And Scarlet Witch is going to be in there, and I think we're going to possibly see her. I think we're going to see her turn bad, or maybe she'll create mutants, and that's how they bring in the Fantastic Four, or the multi-dimensions, or the multiverse that in Spider-Man Far From Home, that Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio character was basically kind of lying about. I think he really wasn't lying. I think there is a multiverse, and it's just embracing that multiverse, and they could, and you can bring so many wonderful elements in to the screen and to the overall arc of things. So it would be really wonderful if Marvel and Sony could sit down and they could work this out. A 50-50 share doesn't seem bad if you think about it. If Sony is getting 95% because they own the character of Spider-Man, and Marvel does all the work, all the promotion, the big machine that Marvel is, the successful machine that Marvel is at promoting and everything else, and the storytelling and everything. They're doing 95% of the work, and Marvel's only getting like 5% return, and they said, hey, let's just split it 50-50, which is kind of more than generous, and I'm not for big conglomerates and big entities like that, but I'm almost in a way excited for Disney. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm pulling for Disney on this one. I want this to be right. I want there to be an arrangement made like there was that allowed Tom Holland's Spider-Man to exist in the MCU, and it's vital if you take Spider-Man out of the equation and let's say we recast him with someone else, it's just going to feel like fatigue. People are not going to be as happy. And I know what it will open up. It'll open up the fact that, and this is also my personal view, and I suspect that it's a view of Marvel, but I don't feel like they want Venom in the MCU. At least not yet. I don't think they want to I hate to say tarnish Tom Holland's Spider-Man character by putting him in with the more graphic, more grittier, Venom character. I mean, that may happen eventually. It may have to happen in the storyline of everything, and I understand that, but let's not Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi, and even though I kind of liked that, a little bit of that, but let's not go there yet, with Venom and Spider-Man. Do we want to see the Sinister Six? Of course we do. There's a little bit of a setup, and the end of Homecoming, Spider-Man Homecoming, and laying some of the seeds, and it's just we're at a brilliant point for Spider-Man Far From Home. Basically, Kraven the Hunter has been kicked around as an idea, is coming in to be kind of like bounty hunters. If you think about Empire Strikes Back and all the bounty hunters were looking for Han Solo, they wanted his head to put him in carbonite or whatever else and get him to Jabba the Hutt and whatever. And I just wish that they could figure this out, and I'm sure they're smart enough, and there's enough billions and billions of dollars and tons of lawyers, and they can figure out what's going to work and what would be the right decision for bringing this universe together. So, with all of that said, I just really hope that they pull it all together, that Sony can come to their senses. Now, they want the Venom Spider-Man movie, and they could recast, they could make it where, if they wanted to, that Spider-Man didn't get into these big things, but eventually Marvel's going to have another thing where they're fighting Galactus, or they're fighting some gargantuan situation, like another, could be worse than, probably will be worse than Thanos, and they need Spider-Man, obviously, and to have Spider-Man still in the MCU, but not really be in the MCU that way, where he, they just couldn't, Marvel couldn't have that control to do with the character what needs to be done, for the story. the overall story. And so it is very disheartening, and it just causes, it's just a lot to unpack. It's just a crazy situation. I've never seen such a thing like this, and I'm sure these are the kind of negotiations that go on that the majority of us never hear about. And it's just interesting to see how it's going to be figured out. And so the latest update is that they're working on it, but I can tell you the whole internet just went crazy today. And in the last day or so, it's gone crazy with some other things. We find out that Matrix 4 has been confirmed with Keanu Reeves and with I cannot think of her name. The lady that played Trinity. I want to say Carrie something, and I forget. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name right now. But no mention of Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne's character, yet. But I'm on board, and if I read correctly, I think it will be written and directed by a female. And I thought her last name was Wachowski, so I'm wondering, is she related to the Wachowski brothers that did the original Matrix trilogy? So I don't know, but her name did seem very familiar, and I could be wrong on that. So let me know if I am, but I'm excited for Matrix 4. I'm not quite sure where you go. Of course, the first one will always be the classic. It was the trendsetter. It changed cinema in a lot of ways with the bullet time. There were video games like that. Every film and comedy film, making fun of films was using the whole bullet time thing. So, it was very instrumental in when it came out in 99, which is 20 years ago, which is 99, 2009, 2019. Yeah, 20 years ago. And it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to go see it. I think this month when it comes out in theaters, I want to see it in, the latest technology, catch it in the Big D or whatever. Or I don't know if they have, Big D at AMC. Hopefully it's playing there, because that's all we have is AMC's in my city. But I'm excited to see it, and I really hope it plays here, because I'd love to see The Matrix on the big screen, digitally, with all the new digital stuff. So I'm excited for 4. So another thing came out, and it was just, I wouldn't call it a teaser. I certainly wouldn't call it a trailer, but it's just James Bond. And you basically see the letters, and he's kind of like walking in shadows and stuff. And it's basically the 25th James Bond film. It's going to be Daniel Craig's last film. I know he said before he'd slit his wrist before he'd do another Bond film, but he had a change of heart, or his career wasn't going as well, or whatever. The paycheck was just too good, and that happens. But I'm happy to have Daniel Craig back, and this will be his final Bond mission. And I'm going to call spoiler alert on this. So if you do not want to know the gossip, the rumors that are flying on the internet, if you have not seen them yet, do not listen to this. So this is a big spoiler alert. But first off, I'll tell you the title before I tell you the spoiler. So the title for the 25th James Bond movie is called No Time to Die. So No Time to Die, and it's, playing the music, the dun dun dun, music, and he's kind of just walking around the letters, and it says No Time to Die. And he, of course, will be James Bond 007. Now, this is the spoiler part. Okay, so spoilers. I warned you. Here's spoilers. If you do not want to know, because this is a massive spoiler, if you do not want to know, please stop listening or come back and listen to this later. But the spoiler is, and I do not remember the person's name, nor do I really remember a character from the film she was. And actually, there's a scene where James Bond, something international crisis happens, and James Bond is retired at this point, okay? And M comes to him and says, we need you, James. And you're going to be working, and I think he's reluctant, and I guess he eventually agrees, and he said, you're going to be working with a new agent. And he said, 007. And then in walks, I think her character name was Maria Lambeau, or that may have been her real name. But anyway, Brie Larson's Captain America, her friend in the film, Captain Marvel, walks in. So she will be the first African American Bond, but she's essentially, and how they're kind of saying this is, no, she's not a female James Bond. She's, whatever her character's name is, but she's taking up the mantle of 007. Now, the rumors of Idris Elba, those are not coming to fruition. That rumor's come and gone, but he would have made a great 007. I kind of wish with the character that, if Daniel Craig was going to be last 007, that they do a 00, and forgive me, in GoldenEye, if the Sean Bean, I think it was, from Game of Thrones, Ned Stark, if I remember correctly, he was in GoldenEye, was still one of my favorite Bond films and the best in Nintendo 64 game ever. Anyway, I think he was 006 or 008. I think he was 006, and I should have that written down. I don't. But anyway, I would give her that designation. But if you think about it logically, if Daniel Craig as 007 is retired, then that means the number is still available. But is it like Babe Ruth or Hank Aaron in baseball or whatever, or in football where they retire a number, they retire a jersey, I kind of wish they would do that and say, okay, no more 007, but 008, the new and improved. It's a female, it's, whatever. I don't necessarily have a problem with that if it's done right, and if it doesn't feel like it's, desecrating the legacy of Bond. I mean, we'll always have all the Bond films, and I know Bond is an interchangeable character like Batman, like Superman, which it's pretty much a foregone conclusion at this point. Everybody but Henry Cavill is saying he's still Superman, saying he's not Superman, and Henry Cavill seemed to be holding on. So I think he was a very good Superman. I wanted to see Man of Steel 2. I wish they would have did that before Dawn of Justice and all of that. And that's a rabbit hole, so we're not going to have time. I'm not going to have time to really delve into that. So, the Sony Marvel MCU fiasco, I hope they work it out. We got new James Bond, and we got confirmed Matrix 4. It's like the news just like hit us like great things and bad things. And, I don't want an MCU without Tom Holland. He is Spider-Man. He is Peter Parker. He's doing the role better than I think anyone could. And I think that the formula and what they had set up going into Phase 4 and especially Phase 5 as Spider-Man taking more of that adult leadership role, would have been nice. And we're in kind of uncharted territory, I think, on film, where people know who Spider-Man is, that he's Peter Parker on film. It's happened in the comics, of course, but knowing this on film, and what is he gonna do? He gets Mary Jane, he gets the girl, and there's some talk with the legal ramblings that the reason that MJ in Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home is not called Mary Jane is because of the Sony agreement, that they can't use the Mary Jane name because they own Mary Jane, that character. So, I have no problem with Zendaya playing MJ. I didn't like her as much, I was getting used to her in the first film. I am totally on board and fine with it. I'm for diversity. I'm for trying out different things. Now, when it comes to Star Wars and not being true to some of your characters like Luke Skywalker, that's where you go too far, when identity politics creep into everything, and we feel we have to in Hollywood and in film. We feel like we have to make statements by the type of people that are represented. And I'm not saying they should not be represented, but if it's at the cost of the story, then it's not the wisest choice. And story comes first. If your story isn't super tight and just solid as can be, then everything else doesn't really matter. It's all going to fall apart. It's the foundation of good writing, and there are ways that we can write in more female characters, and I want to see more powerful characters. I don't mind that Captain Marvel's so powered. I have a problem without seeing episode 9 and any retconning they might do. I do have a problem with the Mary Jane syndrome, that Rey in Star Wars The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi is just so overpowered, and yet she's no one. But we're going to find out she's someone somehow, and I trust J.J. Abrams more than anybody. Probably the only other person I would trust would be George Lucas to carry out that vision and see it through and make sure that it is done the way Star Wars is made, the way it's supposed to be. So, if you change a character, I don't have a problem with Falcon becoming Captain America. I like Miss Falcon. But, with the mantle being passed, I don't think you could find a finer actor. Anthony Mackie and the Winter Soldier wouldn't have worked because he's got too much as Scarlet Witch, not Scarlet Witch, as Romanoff would say in the Avengers. She would say she's got too much red on her ledger, meaning she's done too many bad things. So, almost like Ronin or Hawkeye after the blip, or as they call it in Spider-Man, or the snap as everyone else calls it. But are these people redeemable? And yes, they are. But it's very interesting to see where it goes. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this episode up, and let us know what you think about this ongoing Sony Marvel MCU disaster and the horrible implications of, I just don't want to go through another recasting and subpar level Spider-Man films or X-Men films, like the X-Men films, and comparatively to MCU. I want to see the MCU thrive. I can't wait for Disney Plus to come sign me up so I can start enjoying, everything Disney has to offer. But I just want it done right, And I wish Sony and Marvel could come to a conclusion that's mutually beneficial. If it's 50-50, whatever the number ratio would need to be, I just want them to be able to figure out exactly what it is that they need to do to make Tom Holland and the Spider-Man character stay in the MCU and to be a functioning part of the MCU. I don't want it to be like, it's like someone, think of it this way, it's like someone owning the character of Yoda and the whole Star Wars universe and maybe the prequels per se, and, through the original trilogy of films and all that. It's like somebody owning Yoda and bringing Yoda in, but yet Yoda can only do this, Yoda can only do that. There's, too many restrictions. Let the MCU, Sony, let the MCU do what they've been doing best. They gave you the biggest hit in your studio's history with Spider-Man Far From Home cracking $1 billion, and it was a great movie, and it's, we're on a roll. Let's not destroy things, and I trust Disney will do what they have to do and whatever negotiating tactics that they need to implement to make it happen. So anyway, enough about all this. It's getting late. I've got to go, but I did want to go on record here and kind of talk about this whole situation. So let us know at Geek Homeworld. We're on Twitter at Geek Homeworld. I think we're on YouTube. Our main site is geekhomeworld.libsyn.com. We're on iTunes, Google Podcasts. Check us out there. We're going to be doing a lot more fun things with the podcast. I apologize if I haven't been podcasting as much. I've been working on Savannah on Film, my radio show. That's taken more. And life happens, of course. And so there's been a lot of things that have happened that have kept me from this creative side of myself. So we're working on doing more podcasting, getting out there and getting into vlogging more. And I'm working on getting a camera. So if anybody wants to send me a really nice camera so I can vlog, that would be awesome. No, it's fine, but I wouldn't say no. I don't think I would. So anyway, thank you for listening to Geek Homeworld. I appreciate it. We started in 2008. I've been podcasting since 2008. I did for 6.5 years the Digital Man Cave podcast, which became the Geek Homeworld podcast, just more streamlined. And I also in there somewhere did a podcast with my wife called The Quotables, where we took famous quotes and kind of put them in context for the day and time. And we did probably 8 to 12 episodes of that, and those were fun. And we got a lot of things planned for the channel. I'd like to talk more about some comics and different things, and get back into some more video games and such. But we'll see what the future holds. So I'm always looking for interesting people to talk to here in my studio that I'm in process of building. So anyway, thank you all for listening. Thank you for listening for all these years, for interacting, being part of the community, and thank you. It means everything. So This is Ciucevich, aka SavageTechman, and saying good night, and let's hope Spider-Man can defeat his Sony foes and stay in the Marvel universe, and Tom Holland with that intact. So here's to that, and we'll talk to you soon. See you soon on the podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. Goodbye. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Geek Homeworld with your host, SavageTechman. You can find us on Libsyn, Google+, follow and interact with us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, listen to us on iTunes and leave a review, subscribe to us on YouTube, read our thoughts on Blogger. See you again on the Geek Homeworld.